Want to welcome you to another Facebook Live here as we come to you the second Thursday of each month. And just want to thank you for your time. And I look forward to having a conversation today with each of you as we talk about the importance of character, caring, and the values of our profession. How do we enculturate that into our students? And so today's topic is with Dr. Nelda Godfrey, a prominent and well-known nurse educator, as well as the founder of the International Society of Professional Identity in Nursing, will be my special guest. She's also a friend and colleague, and I'm so excited to have her with us today. I want to let you know that today's topic, number one, if you're joining us live and you're here, I want you to basically just put your first name in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from. That's the beautiful thing about Facebook Live. If you're here live, we're going to ask questions. This is going to be a dialogue. So if you have specific questions about today's topic, want you to ask it, put it in the chat as we get to that point. But as well, just want to have a conversation. So we look forward to this opportunity. So let us know who's out there, and we'll go from there. I just wanted to kind of highlight that, the inspiration for today's Facebook Live basically comes to us as a result of a blog article that I wrote 10 years ago when I was really a lot younger and just had a little bit more energy. But it was on the values that Nightingale, she had 5 key values and character traits she insisted upon in her probationer nurses in the late 1800s. And the cool thing is, those values are still relevant today, but how are we teaching them? So if you'd like to know what those 5 values are to get a head start on today's conversation, as well as just give you some great background information, the link is in the chat. Please check it out. I also want to let you know that last month, we had a topic on preparing practice-ready nurses with Marianne Jesse and Icon Ed and the incredible work they're doing to support the needed change to close this academic practice gap, that disconnect between how nursing is taught and practiced. Want you to know that that's a priceless conversation. It's on our YouTube channel, Think Like a Nurse. There's the link. You can subscribe to get first in line with everything that we do here. And so we've got some people from Kansas. Now, Nelda's from Missouri, but she's at the U of KC and now at the University of Missouri. But Kim from Kansas, Sarah from Kansas, Sanine from California. Sanine, we've got snow in my office window. We're going to have probably another 12 inches here in the next 2 days. So you're blessed if you're in California and not having to deal with that inclement weather. So anyways, and Dee Dee from Springfield, Missouri, and Brittany, I don't see where you're from here. Yeah, from Michigan. So got the Midwest well represented. I know there's many more tonight that are here that are just a little shy, and that's okay. I'm not going to ask for anybody to call themselves out. There's no reason for that, but just want to say thank you and welcome. And Janice from Maryland. And Raydell from Wyoming. Great. We've got the whole country here. Thank you. It's all coming in. And I don't want to spend too much time on that or I'll just keep going. But you guys can see the chat. It's so exciting to have you here with us. And, I just want to introduce myself. If we haven't met, my name is Keith, and I'm the founder of Keith RN. I'm just an everyday educator who saw the need for change 15 years ago when I was an expert nurse, but got cut my teeth, loving to teach students in clinical and then in the classroom. But then I saw the gap. I didn't know what it was called, but we had things like NANDA, 10 to 15 page care plans, and PowerPoints that just had slide after slide of content that I was expected to cover. And that didn't prepare my students for practice, and it still doesn't today. And we've got a gap that we need to close. And so I am passionate, and I just decided to create a better case study. So if you're looking for unfolding case studies that are not scraped from the internet, that are authentic, and use open-ended questions, which is what a nurse uses in practice, there's no multiple guess. Keith RN has got some incredible resources, and I'll share with you. Let me see if I've got my link to my sepsis case study. I hope I didn't take it off. You know what? I did. I'll find the link later on when Nelda's talking. But anyways, I want to basically let you know just a couple of events that Maria, our nurse educator consultant, will be in New Jersey at the New Jersey League for Nursing Conference. And here is the link if you'd like to check that out. If you're in the New Jersey area, she's going to be doing some a presentation as a pre-con. And I am blessed. I'm really excited for this. In just a couple weeks, end of March, I'm going to be at TODN, the Texas Organization for Associate Degree Nursing, and their spring conference in Bryan, Texas. And so if you're a Texas educator, looking forward to, we're going to have a day and a half workshop. It's going to be 10 hours, 9 hours plus of active learning, learning how to really just close this gap. And let's teach clinical judgment. Let's get our students prepared for practice. And if we prepare for practice, the NCLEX will take care of itself. Thank you very much. That's my hypothesis, and I'm sticking to it, and I hope it's yours as well. So anyways, with today's topic, I'm going to introduce Nelda Godfrey, and I do want to ask a question to the audience because there's about a 30-second delay. So just kind of get this in the chat as soon as you're able. But my question for the audience, because you're here live, I'm so glad you're here. What character trait is needed in a professional nurse, but yet it's one that most of your students struggle to develop? And maybe they don't even get it there by the time they graduate. Hopefully they do, because we have a responsibility to enculturate the next generation, even though we don't have diploma programs anymore where they were enculturated in the whole atmosphere of healthcare and nursing. We're not going to, unfortunately, have that back, but we must be intentional to enculturate the values, the ethics, and the professional identity of the professional nurse. And the foundational pillar is the values and ethics our students must possess to be stewards of the profession in the next generation, because we in this generation, we're going to pass away and our students will be our legacy. What are we leaving behind? And are we doing what's needed to make sure that the values and the character that makes nursing still the most trusted of any profession, including medicine? I love that. And it's been that way for many, many years. That's our legacy, and we have to steward that well to our next generation. So if you're a passionate nurse educator who recognizes the need for change and the need to do things differently, this will be a crucial conversation with Dr. Nelda Godfrey. And Nelda, I have talked way too long. I am going to introduce you because I'm excited to jump into our conversation. And before I do, I'm just going to kind of just, I've got technology. There we go. Let's get this all good. There we go. And I'm going to introduce Dr. Nelda Godfrey. She is a nationally recognized nurse leader, educator, and researcher whose work focuses on professional identity in nursing. She serves as professor of professional practice and director of the Nursing Career Success at the University of Missouri and the Sinclair School of Nursing. Dr. Godfrey is also the founder of the International Society for Professional Identity in Nursing, helping advance how nurses think, act, feel, and I'm going to add this, Nelda, care like a nurse. And her scholarship and leadership continue to shape national conversations on nursing education, ethics, and the formation, I love that, the becoming of professional practice-ready nurses. So Nelda, it's your turn. And I am just so excited to have you with us because you've got a lot to share. You're kind of you're like the grandmother of this movement that really isn't a new movement, Nelda, because the values and character of nursing is not like something that just happened 10 years ago. It's been a part of our legacy as caregivers for 2,000 years. But I want to let you just kind of say hello, and I want you to kind of just introduce yourself and anything else you'd like to share, and just share your story about how you got into as a young woman. You weren't born a leader, but you became one. Tell us about that journey.
Well, this is just lovely. First of all, to the people on the call, please know you have my utmost gratitude and admiration for the work that you do every single day. This is sacred work to be able to help people learn how to become nurses who care for those who are having the worst days of their lives. We nurses and we educators do just remarkable work. And I doubt you're told enough to suit me. I think you should be told every single day in every single interaction about how much, how special that is and how much it's appreciated by those of us who watch you do it. So that's what I want to lead off with that.
Love it. Thank you.
Um, and and then I want to say thanks to Keith for including me. We have been buds for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. Let's just say it
Yeah,
that way.
yeah.
The things that resonate with, well, the things about professional identity in nursing resonated very, very quickly with Keith. And so we were on the same page from the very beginning, and he's been helpful to us as we put this society together. So thank you, Keith, for
Welcome.
having me here and for including this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be quiet so that you can ask some questions for a minute. I could talk on and on. I don't want to do that. I like the dialogue idea. So I'll be quiet. You ask some questions
Well,
and I'll
you know what I
answer.
will do, Nelda, if you look at the right of the chat here, I'm just going to highlight, we talked about the values that our students struggle to develop. And, we got here, if you want to look at this list here, compassion, resilience, integrity, communication, grit, accountability, sense of ownership of the patient. Again, compassion, communication, and caring, taking initiative for learning, accountability, humility, giving of themselves. I like that one because I think that a lot of there's, when you look at nursing, Nelda, there's kind of, I don't know if it's a generational thing, but I have noticed that with some nurses, it's like there are things that are beneath them to do. You know what? I'm not going to clean up this patient. I'm going to get the nursing assistant to go into room XYZ. And that's not my, kind of like, it's not like I'm not going to embrace that. And, we know that nursing is all about serving as well as caring. And those that serve are greatest of all. And so I love that recognition of giving of ourselves at some level. Again, we don't want to be abused by the system because that can go too far. But, that giving of self, Nelda, and with those values that educators are kind of just, what stands out to you? And I'd like to let you kind of just comment and observe and share anything that you would like to just kind of, as we talk about character formation, which again is really part of professional identity and that formation of a nurse. And that character and values is the foundation, in my opinion. If they don't have that foundation laid, like a building doesn't have a good foundation, it's on sinking sand and it's going to collapse. And that's really where we're at with so many nurses who they graduate past the NCLEX and they're 2 years in, done. Yeah. And they don't successfully transition to a rewarding career, unfortunately. And it could have happened. So I want you to.
Yeah, it's a little like the chords are wrong. If you were playing a symphony, it's like the chords are a little bit off right now in what we're doing with our nursing students as we're educating them. We have very powerful vectors. So the most powerful vector in the practice arena, and of course we want to be connected with that, the most powerful vector is patient outcomes, which are very difficult to measure, number one, but they are also, the ones we're using now are awfully rough. HCAHPS, the core competency, these things are rough. And hopefully we will get better at being able to measure. But all the focus on patient outcomes doesn't leave any room for the agent, which is the nurse in this case. Another vector that isn't so hot is the vector in higher ed. Humility, accountability, initiative for self-learning. It's just not really a part of the way the system works. So I think those are things to consider. And then thirdly, what I would say is as we talk about professional identity and character, we are really in the larger field of ethics. And I'll just remind you, I know you know these things, but there are three main traditions in ethics. One is called deontology, or Immanuel Kant, and that's the work of the of principle-based ethics, or that intent is more important than the actual outcome. So that's one, deontology. Two is consequentialism, that what matters more than anything is what are the consequences. So what is the outcome? Greatest good for greatest number. Okay. So, like I said, deontology and consequentialism. And then the third one, which really is now coming back into our lexicon in nursing and in this country, is virtue. But there was a period of time in my early years where virtue was never discussed, ever discussed. And virtue simply means to do the good. That's what Socrates said. Living well is not just living, it is about doing the good as you are living. So those three traditions undergird everything we're talking about with character, professional identity, all of the words that I see in this column. And there is an inherent theme in this. That is that we are reaching, we are aspiring, we are wanting to do better. And there is, I will tell you, there was a period of time in our documents in nursing where we were only saying what nurses do, never talking about what excellence looked like or striving for the good. So we're right sizing, I think, now by having more of a focus on virtue, but our institutional structures don't really let that happen. And you all, as you are listening, if you've got comments to make, I really wish you'd stick them in the chat, and we'd love to chew around on these too. And you can join in too, I think. So go ahead, Keith.
Well, they can't join in, but they can chat in the chat.
Okay.
And so anything that they put in writing, Nelda, we'll see. And the thing that's nice, I can bring them up on the screen so we can discuss
Great.
it. You know, when you look at those three traditions, Nelda, just to lay a framework, where do when you look at these values that educators are identifying, do they tend to line up in a specific camp, or are these all across all three traditions of ethical decision making, and what it and what that looks like in the
Right.
character?
Yeah, that's a good question. It actually lands in the area of virtue.
So these are all primarily virtue ethics.
Yeah, they are primarily virtue ethics. If you don't like the term virtue ethics, you can call them values, because everyone has values. Even hospitals have core values that they talk about. But yeah, if you are talking about the consequences, you're really just looking at what the data is, and that doesn't have much value to it.
Very sterile. And so
Yeah,
virtue ethics really capture the essence of what it means to be human and to treat other people with dignity, value, and respect, which is what nursing has traditionally represented.
Right. So true.
So tell us a little bit about your story, Nelda. Kind of just, we're both kind of in the twilight of our careers. And so looking back, it's kind of like, just give us a quick thumbnail on just Nelda and just kind of your work. I mean, what I really want to kind of capture is just your story to really spearhead. You were like the tip of the spear, Nelda, whether you realize it or not, you were, and you know that. 8-10 years ago, when you began to just really, champion this initiative of professional identity that's now in the ACE and Essentials. It's now talked about, it's researched, and you've got an international global society for nursing and a wonderful website. So, and I put that in the chat. But give us your story briefly, Nelda. I think everybody who's here, we could talk about all the technical, and we will. We'll get to practical and make it real. But I want to know Nelda a little bit more.
So I spent the first 23 years of my professional life teaching in a small private liberal arts college that was in the top 100 of liberal arts colleges in the country. And early on, they believed in interprofessional education or interdisciplinary education, and I got involved in the liberal arts curriculum. So I wrote it I taught it, I evaluated it. And this means that I was teaching Plato's Republic or the Bhagavad Gita, which is the Hindu scriptural text, or um, N. Scott Momaday, a Native American author's book called The Way to Rainy Mountain. All of this to 18-year-olds in who had one of 20 different majors as they sat in my classes. And we also had the chance to teach Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And because it was a top 100 liberal arts college, Dr. Angelou came to campus and I was able to hear her, meet her, and shake her hand. So what an experience this is. And when you teach texts that are very old, when you teach the original text that Sir Francis Bacon wrote about knowledge is power, you are just exposed to an entirely different segment of the world. And so after completing those years there, I moved to a research intensive flagship school of nursing at the University of Kansas and looked around and realized how young we are as an academic discipline. We're so young. The very first PhD in the world was granted in the 12th or 13th century in theology or philosophy. The very first PhD in nursing was granted in 1970. So we're just in a very different spot. So we what struck me is we needed to put some of these underpinnings in place, and secondly, we needed better language. So looked around and we found out that our colleagues in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, in the mid 90s said, we've got to do something with these students. They're bright enough. They can do all this math. They can become architectural engineers, but they get into the curriculum and they're like, why do I want to be here? I don't understand what this is like. I don't know what I'm going to do. And they exit and go to another major. They also found that STEM students graduated, would go to the workplace and then leave the workplace within a year or two. Does that sound familiar with any other profession you all know about? So they instituted professional identity formation curriculum. Medicine saw what they were doing in the early 2000s. Medicine said, oh, we got to do this because our students aren't doing any better. So for the last 25 years, our medical colleagues have had professional identity formation as an assessed and measured educational objective in their work. And I just think that nursing didn't come out whole after the pandemic. I will just tell you that. I don't think we did. I think our colleagues in medicine did come out better. And part of it may have been that they had identity formation included in their early education.
Yeah. And, when you look at professional identity, Nelda, let's transition a little bit and talk about what it is. When you look at defining our terms, we've got to be clear and concrete. And so one of the things that a lot of educators kind of, is that what is the difference between professionalism as a nurse and compare and contrast that to professional identity formation in nursing?
So I would really encourage all of you to take a look at the American Nurse Journal of September 24, because there's a seminal article that we wrote in there called Professionalism versus Professional Identity. Clarification can strengthen the profession. Think about that. The layperson thinks that professionalism is somebody comes to your house to clean your carpets, they show up on time, they leave on time, and they don't bang up your woodwork. That's what professionalism is to the common person. That is so far from what I expect from a nursing student that I work with. And you too, you expect a great deal more. It's not an adequate word to describe. But professional identity formation, like the 4 years used in medical school or the 3 years used in the course of pharmacy or PT or OT, that's more like what we do. So professional identity is about thinking, acting, and feeling like a nurse.
Yeah. And so it's developing really, what's inside. It's not just the thinking and, it's developing the character as well as the caring that influences what we notice. And, Chris Tanner talks about that in her theory. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit later, Nelda. We got some great questions here. I kind of just want to, I'll just kind of, I'm just going to go through them one at a time because you know what? You took the time to put them in, audience. We're going to talk about it briefly. So this person says, I tutor nursing students. And I'm sadly surprised at the lack of personal accountability that students possess. I'm curious, Nelda, you've been doing this many years in the academia. Do you see a trend in that direction, or has it always been there? That people are people and that, we all have our dispositions for self-centeredness. So is that something that is new, getting worse? How do you see that?
Okay, so I have an opinion. I'll just give an opinion on this.
Give an opinion, because we all have one.
Back in the frontier days in our country, when kids went to school, they went to a country school, and maybe there were 6 or 7 girls and 8 or 10 guys, boys in that one room schoolhouse. And when you went to school, you compared your dress made out of feed sack fabric with another little girl's dress made out of feed sack fabric. You weren't looking at the entire world. Because of social media, our students, our humans on this planet have exposure to 7 billion people's input, airbrushed and everything. Mm-hmm. And I just think it's such a poor representation. And why are we, we're not really surprised that doom scrolling causes depression. I mean, we know this. It's not an uplifting kind of thing. So I think when you see so much negative, you pull in and you don't see an area that you can have accountability for, except one that's very small right around you. So to think that a discipline is going to provide some of that lift for you, it seems incredulous to them. Like, why would that ever happen? I've got to manage my own. I've got to think about this myself. Nobody's going to help me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, great insights, Nelda. And that's so true. I've got another educator who has this lengthy comment. I think it's worth reading. She says, I think this is Christine. She says, I think that many faculty and students do not see the value in professional identity. Many believe that the newer generation of nurses will just get their professional identity when they start at the hospital. Many do not understand that it really needs to be taught just as much as nursing skills. I know you have something what would be your thoughts on that, Nelda?
Well, I think that
take your time. This is worth digging into a little bit because it's a common theme that I think a lot of educators have.
So let's talk about the physiology of the cell. And we talk about as goes sodium, so goes water. I mean, you know that, okay? I would say as go faculty, so go students. And I think if our faculty have a deep understanding of the value of professional identity writ large in the domains that we've talked about, and we'll talk about those more later, I think that the faculty have an enormous influence on others. And all of us have seen situations in hospitals that we thought we'd never see. I mean, pick a news story. And so to expect the hospital to produce this or begin this, I don't think it's possible.
Yeah.
I'll stop there. I love hearing what other people have to say.
Yeah, no, it's great feedback. Let's go to another comment here from Dee Dee, and she says this. Let me just throw on the screen here. There are so many demands on curriculum to pass NCLEX, but not on professional identity. This is a woman after my heart, Nelda. It's like planning for a wedding while ignoring the preparation for marriage. It's far more than professionalism than just showing up. And really it's about, Nelda, what this really gets to, and this is so important, I want you to highlight this. Professional identity formation isn't like an optional little seasoning salt. It is foundational to professional preparation for practice. If our students do not possess a professional identity as a nurse and embrace that new identity of what they are becoming and what it means to live those out, they will not be retained in the profession. And that's part of the problem we're facing. And what are your thoughts, or what research do you have or insights to just kind of put an exclamation point on that?
So, I think you're so right about this, Keith. And there is plenty of blame to go around. There's blame with a novice learner who doesn't really know why it's important. There's faculty who are overrun with the work that they've got to do and can't think about how this could ever be on the plate with everything else. This the Department of Education flurry just lately with nursing not being a profession really opened up some of our wounds with that, because we think of the enormous responsibility any nurse carries, and then we're not recognized for it. It really hurts. And then there are things that are happening that are good. So let me give you some examples. There's a school in South Dakota that when they interview new faculty members, they ask the faculty candidate to explain their own path in regards to values and ethics, knowledge, nurse as leader, and comportment. Well, what a positive, affirmative thing to ask. So the faculty gets to explain how he or she embodies that, and the rest of the faculty get to see that. And they're also communicating that this is an important value. Another way that the professional identity 4 domains and the definition are used is in peer review. So in hospitals, there is a tenet, I think, within the magnet system where you do peer reviews. Well, what if you used an instrument like we've developed for professional identity in nursing, and we sat next to our colleague and went through, these are the things you do really well, and let me tell you about them. Or what if we did that in education? We use that as a marker instead of sometimes hard to conceptualize peer review categories. I'm going to be quiet because I want to see what's in the chat. So
yeah, no, and I'll keep going here. It's like, here's a short question, but it's a great one. How do we make students own this idea of professional identity? And, the thing that we did, in school is only the beginning. And one of the things that we didn't mention, Nelda, is the 4 pillars. Now, we've already talked, we're going to focus today on values and ethics, but you mentioned in passing, and I don't think the audience caught that there are 4 key pillars. Values and ethics is one of 4. Why don't you briefly highlight the other 3, and then I want you to jump into that question.
Sure. So values and ethics, knowledge acquired from many, many places. We know that. Yeah. Nurse as leader, which started out as leadership, but our colleagues in practice said, well, we only think of leadership as people with an official title. And you and I know as educators, that's not how we think about it. We know that every single nurse is a leader, and we want that nurse to embody that. And then the last is comportment. And we in education know more about comportment than our practice colleagues do. But it was a hard term for some people to get their arms around. But it means a nurse's professional behavior in one's words, actions, and presence. And you think about our superpower as nurses. I used to work staff on the weekend, float the house at a big medical center. Not that long ago, but I used to do that. And I could change the tone of that unit, of a 45-bed unit. I could change the tone of that unit in an 8 or 12-hour shift just by how I interacted in that environment. And you've done that too. You do that all the time. You have a gravitas that goes with being a nurse and a nurse educator that's really important. So how do we help students own this idea? School is only the beginning. If they don't have the words, that's a shame, because our faculty need to be teaching it. But here's my quick story on that. There was a time, now you can imagine this, that a certain number of students, 3 I will name, were behaving very, very badly. Have you ever had students that behave very, very badly? Well, as the honor committee was trying to figure out what to do, I then got asked if I would do an independent study with these 3 students individually. I didn't even know what the problem was, but I had them do some reading and some writing and dialoguing with me over this short 1 credit hour independent study. What I found out is the students had no idea, even though they had learned professional identity in their program pretty solidly, they had no idea it was for them. They didn't know it was for them. So that, I think, is the message I got out of that.
Okay. I've got another great question. This is a great comment, by the way, Nelda. I have a BA in psychology previous to nursing. Liberal arts courses in psych, sociology, anthropology are important to take to understand human behavior because we're taking care of people. Schools, and I think she's referring to nursing schools, seem to be stripping away the liberal art prereqs that are valuable to young adults entering nursing. What are your thoughts on that, Nelda?
Oh, well, I felt like I was re-educated going to work at a small private liberal arts college. I can't say enough about the breadth and what that has taught me. I actually do, in some way, think that though we go into nursing to understand the human condition. And so we're going to be curious about that. But I'm with you. I think you are a fortunate person. And I don't know your name, but I think you're
Emily. Thank you, Emily.
And a very fortunate person to have that kind of a background. You can see more wholly than others.
Amen. Yeah, and Sanine says this, we teach professional identity as comportment, but the students need time to integrate it, and that doesn't always happen during school. And so it's like, how much can we do, Nelda, during the 2 years in a typical undergraduate program that we have with our students? You know, what's realistic? How much can we get there? And what should we be focusing on? We're really good at establishing the knowledge. And, but these other skills, especially the character and the comportment, are works in progress. What's realistic and how do you see that?
So I have done research with associate degree educated nurses curricula and baccalaureate educated nurses curricula. And I will tell you, hands down, both areas are teaching they're teaching the professional values of nursing. There is not a difference in the two groups. Number one, thought you would like to know that. Secondly, I guess I'll push back on it takes a long time to teach this. Actually, I could teach you the definition of professional identity in nursing. You could probably learn it enough to repeat it back to me, and I could teach you the 4 domains in about 20 minutes. Further, if I were talking to a nurse in practice and explaining professional identity, this scholarly work that I do and practical work that I do, you know what? It takes me about 1 minute to 3 for that nurse to get the what and the why of why I'm bringing this up. We know we are bereft. We don't have the language, and we need the actions to go with this to move this forward.
And, Nelda, wouldn't you say that we also need to role model this behavior as faculty, that we need to be the highest level example as a faculty of professional identity in nursing? And that's, I think, something that we sometimes lose sight of and we forget.
Well, it's hard to do. It's hard to do with the pressures that we have in sure. There's a lot about nurse faculty fatigue. It's real. It's really real. And if any of you are full-time faculty, let me just say this. I was looking at an infographic from NCSBN the other day, probably 2 or 3 years old, but the comment was, the little box was, that what percentage of faculty are full-time? 37% of faculty are full-time. So if you are a full-time faculty member, you are carrying a lot because there's a lot of other faculty who are not there on a full-time basis. It's many, many things to do.
And I also, now they're going to put a couple articles. I asked my ChatGPT, what is the best of Nelda Godfrey's articles? And it gave me these 2. New language for the journey, embracing a professional identity of nursing. I think that was one of your early articles where you really define and you explain the pillars, the definition, and where you got that kind of the inspiration from medicine and their formation of medical providers. And then the other article was on a new mindset from tasks to professional identity. So those links, the first one is a full text. I think the second one is a full text that is available on the internet. legitimately, so I'm not scrubbing inappropriately. But those links are there for our audience, and so please build on kind of, if this is a new concept, to kind of just be able to take this and make it practical. Now that we got a lot of comments, I'm just going to quickly go through them because they took the time to put them in. I will, one of them just kind of talked about, using. Oh, here we go. Let me just. I don't think I missed this one. And so NCLEX pass rates are something that nursing schools are directly evaluated on. Thus, it is actively measured and acted upon, while professional identity is harder to quantify and teach. Now, it seems like you're saying, though, it's not as hard as we think it is, Nelda. So maybe you could make it practical. Give us some nuggets as far as, like, for educators who are already kind of saying, I'm overwhelmed. How do I make this practical in whatever I'm teaching? I mean, I think we have to thread this throughout the curriculum, number one. It's not just like we do this in the final semester or we do it here and then it's done. It's threaded and we reinforce it. And any thoughts of how you have seen your colleagues integrate and just keep it simple? Because that's really what we need to do now. We just need to do it differently and we can bring about needed change.
So I must mention my colleague, Carol Taylor, who's first author on a prominent fundamentals textbook. They've decided to situate every chapter in that text, in the new edition of it, with values and ethics, knowledge, nurse as leader, and comportment. They felt like it was that important for communicating to the beginning nurse what it means to think, act, and feel like a nurse. I think that's pretty dramatic that is going on. It's also a part of accrediting language for ASIN, NLN, CNEA, and for CCNE. So this is part of our lexicon now. Yeah, I think it is harder to quantify and teach, but you could do a 5-minute post conference where you're saying, these are those 4 domains. Let me show you how I demonstrated that today when I was interacting with you all.
Mm-hmm. Here's another great comment. Professional identity is hard for them to see in themselves. They identify primarily as a spouse, a sibling, or nursing students, but not as an emerging professional. That's so true, but we need to help them to see that is what they are becoming. It's not just that nursing is not what you do, Nelda, but it's something that you are becoming. It is a transformation. There are values and ethics that we as nurses, regardless of our culture or our gender, that we embrace because they're universal principles of what it means to be the few, the proud, the professional nurse.
These are the words that we must use because we have been doers. We have been giving out so much. We don't have the words you just talked about, Keith. We don't have those in our common language. We're talking about what is the outcome for the patient or what is the nurse giving out. And this is not a healthy way for a discipline to grow itself. And you notice my words. I say discipline. I talk about nursing more than I talk about nurses. It's a conscious effort. I talk about, I really try to talk about the students in the class I teach rather than my students. Mm-hmm. Think about our pronouns and what we use because they are not our patients. They are people who have chosen to become nurses, and we need to help them become nurses, and we need to model that language differently.
Yeah, no, great feedback. Good points, Nelda. I'll just Sandra just said this comment. I think students know, but they refuse to accept that it is part of a nurse's identity of what it means to embrace these ethical and especially the professional comportment and values. So just to comment there. Sandra Taylor also says, I have full-time faculty here, and I can't begin to describe how much I am currently doing 2 clinicals on my off semester. Yes. So again, we're overwhelmed, Nelda, but yet, we're going to get into some very practicals here in just a little bit with caring and compassion and talking about some of those specific virtue ethics. And I'm going to ask you, Nelda, do you have any activities that you could incorporate into a clinical rotation? Is there anything? I've got some things I can share, but I also want to know if you have anything, Nelda, that that is on the website, on the International Society of PIN. Is there anything there
Yes.
specifically? Why don't you
Yes.
tell us about that? And I'll put the link back in the chat so people
Sounds
can.
good. Yes, there one of the pages on the website. I can't tell you exactly which one. We've been adding student activities that are really exquisite. And I think we've got about 8 or 10 there now. But the other place to go is to go to the CCNE, I'm sorry, I would say ACN's website on the essentials. All of this work in professional identity is tied up in professionalism, which is domain 9. And if you go to that website, there are helps on how to teach that. So there are all kinds of, I have helped do that, I guess, a year or two ago, and there's probably 25 different activities that can be used there. Plus, I think the students can begin to figure this out too. They can help. They could even run the post conference. I just think there's a lot to be said. These people who have chosen to go into nursing are not doing it as a dress rehearsal, and they're not doing it because it's an easy major. They have chosen this. This is their career choice. And so we really need to support them as they are making this choice. And what we do is we give them more of a mantle around them, like a cape, not really a cape, but a mantle around to say, this is what the discipline and this is how it will carry you. So an example of the beginning nursing class where I'm teaching at University of Missouri, Crystal, the teacher, was telling me she was starting to introduce the idea of professional identity. And these are very young people in this class. And she said she watched them. And as she talked about professional identity, she saw their shoulders start to relax. So they felt like the discipline could help carry them in this important work that they feel that they've chosen or they are called to do. Now, that is also a good that comes from professional identity.
No, and I'll just share, Nelda, too. When I created a lot of resources in our Think Like a Nurse membership, we've got almost 20 case studies of unfolding case studies on practice dilemmas that emphasize the values and ethics and character of the nurse, as well as even a contract for developing my professional identity and what a student will commit to. It's like a 3-page simple contract that I had some colleagues, you might have even had your fingers on that at some point years ago to help me kind of fine tune it. But again, this is what I'm going to sign, and this is what I'm going to uphold myself to these standards. So just making these 4 pillars practical, especially the values and the character that we want our students to become. I just put some practical language to that. So that resource is available if you'd like to check that out. So got some other comments here. We got to get, here's one from Megan that I think is worth, it's going to highlight. I teach foundations, and I'm realizing I'm teaching these core concepts, especially regarding values, ethics, knowing themselves, and the importance of doing the work to understand themselves so they can care for their patients more holistically. And so making that visible. Any comments on that, Nelda, or just say kudos?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the first thing is bringing things to light. I mean, Benner in the Educating Nurses, a call for radical transformation, she talks about the hidden curriculum.
Yes.
And most of this lands in the hidden curriculum unless we make it explicit. Yeah. So that's what's happening because it's in the essentials and the ACN standards. This is going to become explicit for all of us to be part of. So yes.
Yeah, and Dee Dee then had this comment where she says, replying to Megan, I build on that in second semester mental health during a workshop with case studies, allowing students to explain how their actions fit into the 4 domains. It's about helping them learn about themselves. And so I think what she's saying, Nelda, is this sense that if we have an awareness as educators of, okay, this fits into the knowledge domain, this is fit into the professional comportment, this is fit into values and ethics. Once we have that clarity of what these foundations and pillars are, we can begin to see in our curriculum just without even making it visible. It's like we can map it in our heads and then make it visible and then kind of just put that exclamation point using the PIN as our framework.
Exactly. And also want to nod to our own backgrounds in psychology, developmental psychology. We know that the need for affiliation is very strong with the age group that we teach. So when we bring forward the four domains and the definition of professional identity, we are augmenting, we're encouraging that affiliation with the profession. And I want to go back to what Roberta had said about uh, the students thinking of themselves as spouses and siblings and that sort of thing. This is not new news. This has gone on for the last, I remember 20 years ago, seeing a study that looked at what is the ethical model that nurses use in making decisions. Well, they made decisions based on their family of origin because we've not strengthened what any one or 20 ethical frameworks are for a nurse. So it's just underdeveloped. We're underdeveloped. We need the language to help us do that. As an example, I started my career, I've been an adult med-surg nurse, step-down nurse all my career. When I first began to doing end-of-life care, I have to tell you, knowing Kubler-Ross's stages of grieving were really important to me. Had I not known about them, I wouldn't have known people could deny, or they could have anger, or they could have acceptance. Now, did everybody experience that? No. Did they experience it in a sequence? No. But I had those words so I could do something with it. That is the value of professional identity domains and character and all these things we're talking about. We are giving them words so that they can incorporate it into their practice.
Yes. And that's something that it's always been there, Nelda, but we haven't made it visible. It's been hidden. And that's kind of where we want to make the hidden curriculum visible. And so our students can really understand what it means to be a professional nurse, and not just like it's something that you do. We've got to go deeper than that, because that's not going to cut it anymore. And I think that you're right. We are a profession in crisis post-COVID, and we haven't fully recovered. And if we can enculturate what a healthy and a value that we bring with our professional identity and the values that we embody, it gives them like that healthy mantle of and they own it and they can embrace it and they can become it, Nelda. But we've got to show them the path. We've got to make it visible, because otherwise these things are kind of beneath the waterline, like an iceberg. And as we know about icebergs, it's not above the waterline that kills you. It's what's hidden beneath it.
Exactly. So our colleagues are talking about incorporating this in graduate school, and there is a really good article. First author is Brenda Douglas, Douglass, about graduate education, and it's excellent on professional identity. So there's starting to be work out there that's addressing the same kinds of things you all are talking about.
Excellent. Even Sandra's got the wheel spinning. She says this: you have me thinking. When I teach this summer, instead of asking my students a question to introduce themselves, I may ask them to identify themselves as, and still need to work it out in my head. And then they can then talk about professionalism, professional identity. Thanks for the ideas. Do you have any thoughts that you could maybe help her spin those wheels a little faster, Nelda?
I think tell them it's not hard. Just like I mentioned the 5 stages of grieving with Kubler-Ross's work back from the 60s, these 4 domains are not that hard. Right. And there's what Porter O'Grady in his work talks about signposts in quantum leadership, talks about signposts. I think these 4 domains are signposts. Yeah. And at some point you're going to look at a particular signpost more than others. And then maybe another time it's something different, but they are anchors to how it is we think, act, and feel as nurses.
No, so true. And we've got a couple other comments here, Nelda. You know what? We're going to probably we're not going to get to a lot of the things we talked about, but I think this is why I think I'm going to develop my Practice Ready podcast, so we can keep talking and then just post it on another channel. And so that's something that I think we'll be looking for later this summer. But for right now, we're going to have to cut it in about 5 minutes. But I do want to get these other things here, Nelda. And Emily says this: I think it's important to discuss with students the trajectory of their professional development based on Benner's novice to expert. Students can be very task-oriented. So it is important for them to reflect on how their identity in their new role is developing. That's a great reflection question, is it not, to ask in post-conference? That's a wonderful idea, Emily. Thank you for sharing that, because reflecting on, just what, how that identity, and to give them that visible, that concreteness of what it is, but we have to define it, but then let them see how they're becoming, which again is a work in progress. But
right.
So anyways, and I'll look at this comment here. I'll just give her the platform. I tell my students that being a professional means looking and acting professional. Looking and acting professional leads to being a professional in practice. And now we're going to get into some gray areas about tattoos and piercings and other things. But in principle, whatever that looks like, we can, that's the word that's going to be very ambiguous, but yet in principle, it's a good thing. She says, and another educator says this, I'm going to ask the students what professional identity means to them. Graduation is just around the corner. That question is like, what is it, how would you phrase that question, Nelda? Like when you look at what does it mean to be a professional nurse to you, or how would you kind of like phrase that question so that our educators who are going to watch this and are already here with us live can kind of just, let's give them some ideas of how we can kind of just, again, make the hidden visible. What would that question look like? What would be, any thoughts? I'm just going to put you on the spot.
Sure. Oh, I'd love to answer this. So
Yeah.
Let's say that the student has been with you for most of a semester. And you could say, well, what examples do you know of how I, the teacher, express values and ethics? And they might not have answers, but you could say, well, you know how it is that I make sure that everyone that has a question, that question gets answered. That is a show of respect for you. And that's my values coming through as I'm working with you. And remember how many times I talk about how important it is to lead, to have the language to lead. That's an expression of my own understanding of nurse as leader. And comportment, there's a difference in how I as a teacher interact with the students than another student interacts with you. How is that different? Tell me how that is different. And I'm modeling this in the best way I can to explain what these 4 domains are.
And, Dee Dee just had a quick comment. If you know the link to this video, she said, I love the videos that Nelda had students do before graduation at one point and how they describe professional identity.
Yes.
Is that a YouTube? Can we get a link on the screen, Nelda, or not? Or where is
I
this
think
video?
so. Yeah. If you, I believe it's under Think, Act, Feel is how you would get to that. So, yeah.
Okay. And you know what, that is the last comment, but I want to close with, one of the educators talked about Tanner, using Tanner in clinical yesterday, and I will not use Benner, but I would say use them both because Benner's novice to expert is always relevant to practice. But what I want to share, Nelda, I went to the Educating Nurses Conference and Chris Tanner was there.
Yes.
And
Yes.
she shared her, and it's not an updated model of, Tanner's clinical judgment model, the steps of noticing, interpreting, and the subcategories, the responding, and then the reflecting on practice. There's a lot here. But what Chris shared, and this was so beautiful to hear it from the author of this seminal study in 2006, but she highlighted section 1 here. What the nurse brings to the situation is going to directly influence what they notice. And so what that means, Nelda, is that caring comportment, the compassion, the empathy, the professional identity, and embracing all these values in the character that we want our students to become directly influences their clinical judgment competency, that you have to care like a nurse in order to think like a nurse. That's what Tanner is, and her theory has always said that. In fact, it's on page 1 of her article. She talks about the assumptions of clinical judgment, and the first assumption is that what a nurse brings to the situation is more important than the situation itself. That what that nurse possesses, Nelda. And so really what Tanner is really giving us permission to is to really just see that importance of professional identity. And, we're talking about clinical judgment every day now since Next Gen and the lack of competency our students possess. But we must never forget that this foundation of formation must be present, or we're not going to develop caregivers that are going to have what it takes and are going to lack some of these key competencies and skills to successfully transition to practice. So this is not optional. This is foundational. And Tanner's model validates that. The work that you've made visible, Nelda, captures that. And I'm just going to let you have the final word, girl. Tell me just kind of, we're at time and we could keep going for another hour, Nelda. And I think if we did, we might even have people stick around. But I know that we both need to cut. And my point is, I want you to have the last word. If you were to say, anything in closing related to this topic and what we've discussed today, what would be just your closing thoughts?
Well, the opportunity to care for patients and families in their most desperate times is a gift that we've been given as nurses. And in order to communicate that gift to the patients, families, and our students, we need to develop language that helps us do it. So to me, this is about new language development, and then in turn, new knowledge development. We are building knowledge within our discipline, and I encourage you to join us in doing that. Thank you.
Yeah. And Nelda, thank you for all that you're doing and you continue to do to serve the profession and to take it to the next level. And it's like we just want to leave this profession better than when than what it was when we entered it. And so if each of us do our part, this is where every educator can make a difference. That, if we can understand and see the matrix and then implement these things, make it a priority. We got to see the value of this, but make it a priority. And then we can all together be the needed change. And so thank you for leading us in this initiative. And there's so much more we could have talked about. I was going to talk about how we develop caring and practical ways of talking about that. And I'll save that for another topic, Nelda, maybe a podcast in the near future. So we'll join on that together. So anyways, a lot of love in the chat, Nelda. Thank you for joining me, and stick around for just about 30 seconds after we're done here. Okay. Thanks, Nelda, and God bless. And thank you all for joining us tonight. I hope you found this helpful. Stay in touch if you have any questions, comments. What I will share in closing is that, Nelda, I didn't ask your permission, but I think you're going to give it to me, your email address. If you want to connect with Nelda, she's got a very short email. And so you can just put those letters together, and you wouldn't mind hearing from educators, would you, Nelda?
Oh, not at all. Not at all.
I know you wouldn't. I'm just being facetious. And so anyways, just stay in touch. And Nelda, thanks again for joining us tonight. And thank you for all that you're doing in nursing education, making a difference to impact the next generation. Though our work is hard, never forget that it's worth it, because you are right where you are for such a time as this. Thank you.